and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me today, as always, the DC area improv artist and comedian, Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, bud?
David. I'm great. How about yourself?
Not too bad. And the freshly moved up the West Coast, I think, Matt Barron. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
Not bad. Did you move? Good. How you doing? Did you move north, south? I'm terrible with Bay Area geography.
With coordinates?
With coordinates and maps and the Googles.
So technically, also literally east. I just moved to the other side of the Bay Bridge. So
you just take a little ferry boat across there?
No,
Just
we
paddle your own
had a
canoe?
car. Yeah, exactly. That's
A car,
what I did. Dave.
Well, I'll tell you what, a car would have come in handy for the show we're going to talk about today. Yeah.
So I could have run it over.
Well, we know how Matt feels about this one. We're going to be talking about, since it was 4th of July weekend this past weekend, hopefully you're all recovering from that, we're going to be talking about Liberty's Kids. It was a early 2000s educational show that was set in colonial times and centered on three kids of varying backgrounds that kind of took other students as they're watching it through the American Revolution over a period of about 20 years. Kids never age in the 15, 20 years.
This is so creepy.
Yeah, kids never age. They stay the same. Ben Franklin, however, he ages, probably due to his rampant venereal disease, which they don't really touch on in this show, surprisingly, because it's meant for like 8-year-olds. But
yeah, really, in terms of historical accuracy,
Right.
they really kind of like they put aside a lot of the misogynistic
they love Ben
tendencies
Franklin.
of Ben Franklin.
Love him in this.
Oh God. Well, I mean, so here's the thing: is that these kids are essentially under his ward.
Yes. Yeah.
And
So this is basically the synopsis here. Yeah.
They are kind of like asked to record history, like from their eyes as children's, through as Dave mentioned, through the part of the Revolutionary War. And so, like, from the Boston Tea Party to
Right.
the Revolutionary War. And I want to get this out. I hate history. Like,
Ooh.
this show.
This was torture for you, then, I'm
This
sure.
show made me realize that I hate history. And I'm glad that it is history, because I'm trying to move on with my life, guys. And this history is just making me continue to look back all the time.
Well, hold that thought, because for the next hour we're going to be talking about it again. So after you're done with that, you can put it behind you.
Oh, are we going to be hating on something that we all didn't really super enjoy? Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Buddy, you can hate away. I was actually not pleasantly surprised by this, but I guess neutrally surprised, so I don't even know if that was really good. It wasn't as bad as I thought.
Is that actually a thing?
I guess. I mean, it is now.
Exactly.
I was neutrally not moved.
So,
Yeah, I posted the theme song up a couple days ago, which I thought, now the theme song was my kind of like first foray into this thing, because we were all in college by the time the show was on, so definitely not the audience it was aimed at. But just from the theme song,
we should have mentioned that the original run went from 2000 to 2003,
Correct.
like late 2000 until early 2003.
Yeah, this was another one that they cranked out like 40 episodes of it and then just
Right.
syndicated
One
it out.
season,
yeah.
40 episodes.
Yeah, which I mean, it kind of makes sense because it's not like they're not going to
because
serialize
history's
it throughout.
finite.
It's very finite.
They got to the Revolutionary War, they're like, oh fuck, we're done with this show.
Everything's going to be smooth sailing from here. Yeah.
Like, guys, let's just push it forward and see if we can get all the way to WW1.
I mean, pretty much nothing happened between the ratification of the U.S. Constitution and, like, Civil War. That's 70 years. Probably nothing happened there, right? So we'll just skip right on ahead.
Probably not a damn thing. And also, those kids wouldn't have aged in that 30 years anyway, so what does it matter?
No, they were all Highlanders. It was kind of weird.
Just a bunch of McLeods.
They were all from the Connor MacLeod clan.
God.
Yeah. Well, there
I'm
it
sorry,
is.
I cut you off, Dave.
No, it's cool. I don't even remember what my train of thought was going to be, but we've already covered the series synopsis and pretty much the history of it. So what the hell? Let's get into it.
You know, it was just a quick history thing. It was by
Deke.
It was by Deke, and here's the thing: is that Deke has made so many wonderful
Suck
cartoons and shows, like throughout the years.
Yeah.
I want to just put a shout out to Deke. Like, they just do
Old school
They
Deke.
have,
Retro
they've
Deke.
done like
Vintage
a lot of
Deke.
like
Yeah.
Vintage Deke did like a lot of great stuff, and so I was when I saw that originally, I was just like, oh my god, it was the thing that every time at the very end of a show they'd come up, and I just laughed myself,
Yep.
like a pubescent.
Yeah,
Freaking
they always
nerd
cut
that I
that in.
was.
So
I
it
was
would
like-
come up for. I mean, I'm sure people remember. It was like the shiny. It was a big D. Go ahead, you can laugh again.
Yeah, there you
Lowercase
go.
I and a big C. And
Get that
before little kids could just shout out Dick, they were just like Deke. And you're like,
Deke.
oh, Deke. Obviously,
Damn it.
it's definitely Deke.
I felt like it was. Here's the thing. I felt like it was an inside joke that Deke and I shared together,
Yes.
and we were always
And
laughing
thousands
at
of other
something that
kids
was
around the
immature.
world, yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right, buddy.
Ugh.
It kept us
All
all
right.
together.
So the first thing that you got into
Oh,
was
right.
the theme song.
Yeah, so I had no idea what this was. We had the idea that since it was the holiday, we were going to do like a holiday themed show, and we were just like,
Mistakes.
shit, like, well, yeah, we'll do it again, I'm sure. For 4th of July, I don't know. This
We'll
is
be
just the first
equally
one
as
that came up.
fucked next week.
Yeah, we'll forget. I mean, we have short-term memory problems, so. Yeah, so holidays, looked up 4th of July stuff. There were like some specials. We were looking at like Schoolhouse Rock, which is probably like the equivalent for us as kids and even an older generation as kids as to what this show was. But yeah, the theme song was my first introduction. Now, that theme song, you can check it out on our site. It's not great. Not great. Not even great as far as like the theme songs that we like to make fun of. It's only like a minute and a half long, but 45 seconds through it, it just breaks down into this quote-unquote freedom rap, which was just pretty awful. Oh, and Sean, who wrote and possibly performed this again?
David, I'm so glad that you asked me.
Yeah.
It was Aaron Carter.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're wondering to yourself, Aaron Carter, who was he a part of? He is the brother
What was
of
his...
Nick.
What was his
claim
function
to-
in
his
colonial
claim to
America?
fa-
Yeah.
Yeah, what
claim
was
to
his
fame?
claim to mediocrity?
His claim to fame was basically he was like in the late 1990s. He was a teenage pop sensation. You might know him from his brother Nick Carter,
Yes.
who was in Backstreet Boys.
So there you go.
Ugh.
And now you know the rest of the story. So that's it. Just a weird little like side thing. So again, like we said, this historical series set in the 1770s up through the 1780s, and Ben Franklin was like this jolly, jovial, revolutionary, but pretty much like a grandfatherly, or just like a friendly uncle kind of character. And he had this print shop. That's where all these kids worked, and they were basically like junior reporters. Now, let's
Like
talk
all
about
uncles do. Every uncle.
yeah,
owns
every
a
uncle
print
does
shop.
it. Every uncle owns a print shop. They're not creepy at all, and they want you to get involved with the revolution and report on it from the front lines sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Child soldiers.
Good stuff, punk.
This is like Coney 2012. This is
What,
really-
what was the battle like? It was horrifying.
It was terrible.
Not in this
You know
show.
what a bayonet is? Ooh.
I saw one shoved through a man's face.
Yeah, these kids should be haggard. Let alone the fact that they don't age. They should be in like psychological counseling at this
They
point.
should be so upset.
They
Like
really
I
should
just,
be.
I feel like sitting down as like a counselor for any of these kids, you'd be like, so tell me, how was your day? And the kids would just be like, seen some real shit. And
As they're
roll up
like
a cigarette.
smoking a cigarette.
They're
Yeah.
doing a line of coke off of like a couch or an ottoman, like in a.
I don't think they let you do that in therapy.
Oh,
You can
really?
do it, in the colonial time. Anything went. You can do colonial coke all day long.
Yeah, it's fine. Oh, so Coke Classic.
Coke
nice.
Classic. Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't part of the Stamp Act, so they didn't have to pay extra tariffs on that at the time.
Oh boy.
Just the tea, which is what we'll get to in a little bit, because the first episode revolves around the Boston Tea Party. Kind of odd that the actual Tea Party was probably less violent than it was on this show, but whatever. We'll get into the historical accuracies and inaccuracies as we go along, but let's get into the characters. The historical characters, everybody, especially like kids that came up in the American education system, will know and love for the most part. Ben Franklin we start with. Now, since Ben Franklin's role in this is sort of a revolutionary, yes, but also sort of a journalist, I thought it was really interesting that they got Mr. Walter Cronkite to do the voice of him. And that is just the tip of the iceberg in this, too. Yeah.
This is what blew my mind, was that, Dave, when you sent out the email that had, like, all of the characters and stuff like that, like, it blew my mind how many noteworthy, like, A-list celebrities voiced characters on this show.
None of the main characters, except for Walter Cronkite.
Yeah,
the rest of them were just...
none of the main
blew
characters.
me
kids.
away, too.
Yeah.
Now, I think because
But, I mean,
it has
that
like
was
an
really
educational
cool.
slant to it, I think it was probably a little easier for them to get to do that.
And a tax write-off.
Exactly. So you guys want to talk about a few of them? Do you have that list up in front of you?
Oh, God, yeah. Let's talk
Yeah,
about
just
it.
knock it out.
Paul Revere was voiced by Sylvester Stallone.
Which is an obvious choice.
Sure. Because Paul Revere... Like, if that happened, everybody'd be like...
That was amazing.
Does Paul Revere have, like... Is he having a stroke?
Did he get hit
Or
by
is
like a
he
stray
just
bullet? Is he alright?
unintelligible? Pretty much, if Paul Revere had been Sylvester Stallone, the British would have invaded us hands down, because everybody would have been like, what the fuck is that mushmouth saying? Like, I can't understand a fucking word out of his mouth.
Pretty amazing, though. Pretty amazing. Equally amazing, I think. When you think Thomas Jefferson, you think, a progressive thinker, a somewhat controversial character, an eloquent, maybe not speaker, but writer. So obviously when you put all those things together, the first person that comes to mind to voice him is Ben Stiller.
Of course. 100%.
Yeah. You think Zoolander when you think Thomas Jefferson.
Just Jefferson flashing that blue steel.
So that was an interesting one.
He was a stylish man.
That's Jefferson. He loved the ladies.
Love the ladies.
Yeah. So,
John Adams was voiced by Billy Crystal.
And that one's just kind of weird. It's like, all right,
yeah,
I guess.
that was weird.
I mean, it was well before Paul Giamatti's turn as John Adams on the fantastic HBO miniseries John Adams.
Yes.
That's what I watched all 4th of July as I was working. They had the whole miniseries on there. It was fantastic. That's where I learned most of my history. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but whatever.
HBO.
Yep, HBO. Nailed it. Just like Game of Thrones, that's where I learned my European history. So.
Yeah, at what point in time were dragons? When did they exist?
In the pre-times.
Yeah, nailed it.
Yeah, pre-times.
There you go. You should study
during the Targaryen dynasty.
the Targaryen dynasty.
Sean, you hate history. What do you care?
Sean, I hate history. No, I know it. I just don't enjoy. It's just not something that I'm a big. I don't nerd out on.
What'd you say, Matt?
I said, Dave, you can read, right?
It's something I've struggled with for a long time as a writer. I hate to.
You don't know what you're writing?
No, I don't. I just hope for the best. I cross my fingers, and people keep paying me, so it works.
We just usually get a lot of emails from Dave throughout the week that just say poop, copy paste 20 times.
The guys just they just hide it from me. It's not something it's not something we like to advertise, but this is why we moved to a podcast and audio medium. Much better.
Oh my God!
My outlines are complete mess.
Benedict Arnold is voiced by Dustin Hoffman.
Another one just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And just Rain Man Benedict Arnold.
Now I will say this for the next 3 on our list here, they at least more or less match up the ethnicity, I guess, of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was kind of interesting. So you've got Baron von Steuben, who you're gonna have to refresh my historical memory. Was he part of the Hessians, or was he the German soldier that came over and was actually helping Washington? I can't remember what.
Oh man, I thought he was the German soldier that came over to help.
I thought he was too, but I didn't know if he came from the Hessian faction or not. But anyway, let's just say that he's of the Germanic tribes. So what famous pseudo-German, technically Austrian, would you have voice him?
I'm glad that you asked.
Yeah, continue.
Because this is me only.
Oh, is that who? I wasn't sure who it was.
Oh,
who joined us on the podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Well, we couldn't have him and Stallone on at the same time because it would just be a mess. So, thankfully they came at separate times and recorded that lovely intro for you all. John Paul Jones. Baron, you want to take this one? Can you do your best?
Yeah. John Paul Jones was Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
And I just can't do a Liam Neeson.
Nobody can.
I mean, I could call you. I could call you up and tell you I have a
particular set of skills. Yeah. This is well before that too. Now the last one, I don't know if you guys know who this is. Do you know who? First of all, I don't know who Bernardo de Galvez is. I think he was a Spanish emperor maybe at the time, or Spanish king. I'm terrible with history. Don Francisco. Don Francisco voiced him. Now, Don Francisco, I only know because of Univision and Sábado Gigante. That's the only reason I know him. And I think that's what everybody knows him from. But
pretty much.
That's pretty random. Pretty cool. So that is our voice cast of these guys. And these are just ones that just pop up on random episodes. Now, Whoopi Goldberg also did one. I'm trying to remember her name here. Deborah Sampson. And she was basically a colonial woman who dressed as a man and joined the Continental Army. So she actually fought in the army. Not the only one to do it, but fairly well known.
It was like the plot of Ladybugs if you removed the soccer component and put in Revolutionary War.
And bullets.
And bullets.
That's exactly what it was like. Yeah. Rodney Dangerfield was around there.
And it had Rodney Dangerfield, thank you.
Yeah. Rodney Dangerfield would have made a killer Ben Franklin.
Oh my God, he was amazing.
He would have been a great Ben Franklin.
I would have loved this show if Rodney Dangerfield was in it.
It would have been more historically accurate too.
Oh,
yeah.
God. All right.
So that was Whoopi Goldberg.
We talk about all of these additional celebrity voice.
Yeah, who show up for one episode
actors,
maybe. Right.
Who show up for one episode. But we're missing the main cast of the 3 children.
Oh, I don't know, the title characters, the
Yeah,
Liberty's
the
kids.
Liberty's kids.
Kids of Liberty, Sons of Liberty would have
How
been a
pretentious
better.
are you to call
Yeah.
yourself Liberty's kids?
Well, especially because the kids that they have, like the kids that they have involved. So they have, I don't even want to call them token, but they're very representative of different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, national backgrounds that are forming this new country called America. So you've got,
Sure.
yeah, so you've got
2 orphans and a bitch.
and a former slave.
Oh, fuck.
So yeah, that's pretty rough. That's pretty
Oh,
rough,
jeez.
but true. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of true. She was not on
like,
the side
nobody-
of the revolutionaries. Let's put it that way.
Nobody really has like a happy intro story.
Oh, they seem
which
happy
makes
about it when
sen-
they're
which
telling it, though.
Makes well, I mean, yeah, that's the weird contrast is that like when they're talking about, they're just like, so there is a French character.
Do it.
Who
Give me your
was,
best French.
He was
I was going to take this one, but go ahead.
no, yeah, Henri.
Oh, that's it? You're not going to do the rest of his name? Henri
No, I'm
Richard
not gonna-
Maurice
I'm not gonna do-
Dutoit
it's
Lefebvre.
Henri Richard Maurice Duluth Lefebvre.
good enough.
Fabrice.
Fabrice.
Um,
He was of the
Fabrice.
Fabrice family.
The Fabrice
Yes.
family. He is on his way to America. His parents basically sign up to be like indentured servants in order to come over to the New World.
Yeah, which I didn't
in
think like the
process-
French really had to do that,
Yeah,
but
I
apparently
didn't remember that either,
French
like-
sort of peasantry could do that. I don't know. That was weird
Here's
to
the
me.
thing: I also really didn't pay a ton of attention
Yeah.
to history. I should qualify all of this with saying that like not only do I not enjoy it, but I don't know a ton about it. So
Well, let's just keep this in the framework
really-
of a
I'm- no,
PBS
I'm really-
cartoon for like
Yeah,
8-year-olds,
exactly.
so you don't have to stretch
So
too far.
HBO is really the only place.
Yeah,
that I
much
watch
better, much
any of my
classier.
history.
Yes.
So he's like en route
Very nice.
to the Americas. His parents unfortunately die on the ship.
Of what? They
And-
didn't just die.
Like just the plague.
the
They died of
fucking
the plague.
plague.
The fucking plague. So like he's got plague parents.
Yep.
And so
He's a plague baby. Yep.
plague baby. And so what happens is the guy, the captain of the ship, decides that he's gonna make him like his bitch
Yep.
for the rest of the trip, and just like abuses him during that time. And so sad story again. So
Yeah, but he seemed kind of okay when he was talking about it.
he was kind of like. Here's the thing: out of all the characters, I wanted to like him the most.
Yeah.
Like, did anybody else have like a character that they were just like, I really want to like this character, and I really wanted to like Henry, and he just like every time he opened his mouth, I was just like, you are just
He's the little
like you are just a fucking scamp.
He's the little energetic, kind of gets in trouble, kind of irritating. Yeah. No.
Dude,
I
I
don't really
think
like any of them.
Moses was the best character.
Definitely,
honestly.
You think Moses was easily out of this ragtag four of just ridiculous sad stories. Like he was the best.
Well, Baron, you want to give us Moses' background? And it's interesting to know that we don't see like an origin episode for each of these characters, really. The closest one is
Right.
probably Sarah. They're already kind of like together as a group, more or less, in that first episode. So we get them like at random times. Like they'll be stopped in the middle of the street during a curfew when the British are basically patrolling the streets, and they'll just stop and have an origin story in the middle of the street
Jesus.
after curfew. So it's random stuff like that. That's just like, oh,
It's
let me
ridiculous.
tell you some exposition. So yeah, do you want to tell us Moses' backstory, because it's pretty awful.
Yeah, so I think he was captured from West Africa, I think when he said he was like 8
Yeah.
or something like that, but definitely really young. And then he came to America against his will, and
As you do.
as you do.
Yeah.
But he learned smithing as a slave, and then he was loaned out on like other jobs, made some silver on the side, and bought his freedom eventually. Then came to Boston, somehow ended up working for Ben Franklin. I forgot because I spaced out.
Well, I mean, it
here's
kinda
the thing.
like-
Here's the thing that I want to.
He did too when he told that story. He's like, "Whoop, yada yada
God.
yada." I ended up here. Yeah.
Yeah, like, how do you buy your freedom in the South and then move to like probably one of the most racist cities currently in the North?
Well, was he up in Boston or was he down in Philly? I think he was in Philly.
He was in Philly.
Yeah, for the
Oh, was he in
yeah,
Philly?
Yeah, yeah. Because that's where Franklin
Yeah.
was, and that's where the Continental Congress was. And that's
Redacted.
redacted. So yeah.
Yeah. Also, I just when he's like, and then I bought my freedom. I was like, I don't think it worked that way.
Well, he was also like, he was like, I would do some blacksmithing work, and occasionally they would give me a silver coin. I'm like, motherfucker, you got
Whoa!
you got like, yeah, silver coin. That's pretty
That's
good.
a lot of money.
That's some sort of
That's good-
pence.
That's some
back
good
in the
smithing.
day. I don't know what that is,
Yeah.
but he's like, yeah, and eventually the dude should be like 100 years old by this point in order to like buy his freedom, or he just worked nonstop. I don't know. I don't know how that works, but it worked for the show. And the best part was like he's telling this story of like, wait, Baron, did you talk about how he was like him and his brother were captured, and he was like separated from his brother, and his brother is basically, as far as he knows, either dead or still enslaved?
Yeah, I think I missed that part.
Did you leave that little bright little nugget of the story out there? Because he's like telling these.
How is it the kids show?
Well, he's telling the kids this as he's like trying to fix their like wagon or whatever, and he's just got a smile on his face and he's just doing his work. He's like, "Oh yeah, me and my brother were captured from our homeland in Africa, and we were sold into slavery, and then eventually my brother sold off, and he might be dead, and then I bought my way free and came up here. Well, time to go to bed, kids." Yeah, it's pretty messed up. Now the rest of the kids, I mean, Sarah has probably the best. It's kind of hoity-toity origin story. So let's talk about James before we even get to her, because I don't know when. Baron, you watched a few more of the earlier episodes. I don't know when they get to his origin. I just read it offline.
Let me see. I think they didn't. That was also like not a flashback one,
right?
But I think it was in the third episode.
So this kid's kind of.
Yeah, I think it was in the third episode.
The kid's kind of not really a jerk, but he's basically like your. I don't know. I'm trying to like compare him to Henri, who's like this little energetic Spitfire.
No. Okay, so James is like the guy who gets super obsessed about one thing and then just doesn't shut the fuck up. Yeah. About that one thing. Like everything he does, he's just like, I'm gonna be a journalist. Nobody cares. Nobody can read at this point. How about you teach people to read first, buddy?
Start
you gotta walk,
orphan.
You gotta crawl before you walk, jerk.
Like, little orphan jerk. Yeah, he's another orphan. Because they love populating the show with orphans. It's really bad. And as I was reading it, I was just like, oh, and that's how he becomes friends with Ben Franklin. I saw it coming well before I actually read it.
Do you want to bet that like Ben Franklin was the one that like commanded the lightning bolt to hit James's like family's house,
was like,
killing his parents?
It's basically like, well, I don't have any kids of my own. Maybe another historical fact that people should probably check because I have no idea. He could have hundreds of kids. He's like, so what I need to do is get an orphan to be my journalist in training. What's better way to do this?
Just gonna fly this kite with a key over top of this.
I'm just gonna tie it to this kid's house and see what happens. So basically, he's orphaned when a lightning storm breaks out and burns the kid's house down with his parents inside, killing everyone except James. Now, my favorite tag is that James Hiller, after this tragedy has befallen his family, James Hiller is the kid's name. He now admires Ben Franklin because he invented the lightning rod. Just let that sink in. Don't know if we did it before or after, but either way, whatever. It's like, man, sure do miss my parents and that house we used to have. But good old Ben Franklin and his lightning rod. Now we've got the last person of this group. So at this point, even in the first episode, so James and Henri, there's a few years difference in their ages. James is kind of like a mid-teenager, and Henri is kind of like maybe around 10 years old or so. So there's a little bit of a difference. Moses is older. Moses is maybe in his 20s, 30s, and he's kind of like, he works around the print shop, but he also kind of watches out for the kids.
Oh, no, just go ahead and say it. Moses is the only useful one that actually does anything.
Yeah, pretty much. And he keeps the kids kind of like in check too.
Like Moses is the best. Yeah. I just want to go on record saying that like hashtag the best, hashtag blessed. I mean, like he is wonderful. Like he's the only person who I feel like in this show out of like this ragtag group has like any common sense and is like making any progress regarding like what they're doing. Because these other three are just there to throw like a monkey wrench into like any plans that they have.
Yeah, all their real job is to just like sit back and observe and occasionally do some interviews.
Yeah, their job is to just shut the fuck up.
Yeah, just write it down.
Let history happen.
Well, but now they have to. Their real job is that they have to teach these kids like what's going on. They gotta teach. They gotta reach these kids. So that's kind of what they do. Now let's talk about, before we get into the actual plot of the first episode, Boston Tea Party. Let's finish up with Sarah Phillips. Now Sarah Phillips is the one member of this main cast that has not yet joined up with a group in this first episode. She's on a ship crossing the Atlantic from England, supposed to be going to Boston, I believe. No, I'm sorry. Supposed to be going to Philadelphia. Sorry.
Possibly the best ship I've ever seen. She was the only one on it.
Yes. Except like one captain above deck. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah. and it was a huge ship.
That was
She
enormous.
gets in one little storm, and she gets an ink blot on her nose.
Right to her face.
And
That was a
like,
little weird
right to her
for
face.
me. That was strange. I was like, why? Whose decision?
She takes like an ink money shot
Yeah,
within like the
within
first,
like 40
second
seconds.
of meeting her.
That's pretty weird.
It's like, whoa, what's up, Sarah?
So
How
in
you
the
feeling?
meantime, she's writing a letter back to her mom, who's like this noble woman, Lady Phillips, whoever the hell that is, who happens to be meeting with Franklin at the time. So these two are meeting together. Now, in my show notes, I made a little notation that Franklin was probably trying to bang Lady Phillips because that was kind of what he was known for. This show, for whatever reason,
Thank God you wrote that down.
oh, well, yeah,
Get that, get it.
and then shared it with everyone. Yeah. So for whatever reason, the show decided not to share that with the kids. So just read between the lines here. You can
Yeah.
infer. This is teaching kids to infer.
Here's the other thing:
Shoot.
is that if I ever meet somebody who like leaves like my general area, and then they write to me, and they're just like, "I will write you every day." That's the day I stop being friends with that person.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like 12.
Because I'm gonna not be friends with a 12-year-old if that's
Well, that's
the case.
probably
Like,
good. That's probably a good thing.
probably a good
just in
thing.
general, yeah.
That's how I'm gonna that's my new friend test, is if whether or not you're willing to write me a letter every day. If you even attempt it, we're no longer friends.
This is why we all only talk during this 1 hour podcast.
This
once a
is
week.
it.
This is the only time we talk.
Any more than this, we're no longer friends.
Nope, done. So those are the characters. So now you kind of have an idea, and again, you can go back to the site and check, or you can just Google it. But what the hell? You might as well go to our site and do it because we already did the work for you. You can check out and see kind of what these characters look like. It's very kind of like, it's cartoonish. I don't really know how to describe it or what even really to compare it to.
It's like 90s Disney. It had
Yeah,
that kind of
it's
like,
kinda like a 90s
Beauty
Disney.
and the Beast, angular hair.
Yeah, Aladdin,
thing
even
going
kind of a
on.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably a good description. So that's kind
The
of what
like
they got going.
rounded square eye. Yeah.
The old rounded square eye. I don't know what ethnicity that is, but we'll take it. Apparently it's colonial American.
Oh boy.
So anyway, as I mentioned, so little Miss Sarah Phillips, little hoity-toity loyalist English quote-unquote bitch, as Barron called her, Sarah Phillips, is destined for Philadelphia. Now, she's supposed to go to Philadelphia to meet up with Franklin and the crew, but because of a storm, that ship is rerouted to Boston. You guys remember the name of that ship that she happened to be on?
The Dartmouth.
The Dartmouth.
The Dartmouth.
Yes, which plays an interesting role in the history because that was one of 3 British ships that were caught up in the port and were part of the Boston Tea Party. But I'm getting a little bit
Right.
ahead of myself. So, yeah. So we're introduced to her. We're introduced to these other kids, and that basically, her being rerouted to Boston. That's when Franklin, or I think Moses. Does Moses get a letter from Franklin? Somebody gets a letter and says like, "Oh, by the way, this chick you're looking for is
it
up in
was
Boston now." Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So they just travel up to Boston. Now, here's one of the things that kept recurring in the episodes that I watched. The length of time that it takes anyone to get places in this show doesn't seem representative of what was actually going on in like colonial times.
No,
Like,
I mean this is like some video game fast travel.
Oh yeah.
Back and
Or
forth
even just
between
like common contemporary day highway travel, because like they have to go to from Philadelphia to New York at one point and back within the space of a day. Well, even if you're like pushing the horse and getting a new one every few miles, it's probably still going to take you like 15-20 hours just to do that. So these guys just hop up to Boston, they're good to go. So when they get up there, kind of what transpires once they get up to Boston? They start walking through the mean streets of Boston.
Boston Tea Party, son.
Yeah, right to it. Going right to it.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, here's the thing: is that
You don't even want to talk about Sam Adams hanging out in the bar
Oh,
and
yeah.
being all rowdy and fat.
like he was great.
Rowdy and fat.
He was
I
rowdy and
mean-
fat. He's like, "You all
Yeah,
know me." He's like
yeah.
this portly dude. He's like, everybody's just like sloppy drunk. He's like, "You know me, I'm Sam Adams." He's like, "Here you go, kids. Now you should know who this is." That was Sam Adams calling up.
I mean, it's just it was. Sorry, I
We
just
were
got a text from
disparaging
Sam
him.
Adams. I feel like I liked that they threw Sam Adams in there.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny to see him like riling up a group of people like in a bar like in Boston, because like that's exactly what you would expect Sam Adams to be doing.
Currently,
Um,
like today, even.
Current like
yeah.
it like now. Like
Citing
not doing
the
anything,
Sugar
doing
Act,
that
the Tea
and
Act,
meeting-
the Stamp
yeah,
Act.
exactly.
Yeah.
So many acts. I just like, but it was kind of hard because like he was kind of in and out, and it was just like, like it felt like it was a missed opportunity that they could have explored a little bit more about Sam Adams and his character.
Well, look, what they did there, they brought him in, and they're like, oh, it's a recognizable name that you kids probably heard in a history lecture at some point when you weren't sleeping. So they're just like, it's Sam Adams. And he goes
Who
through
hasn't
this,
heard
like,
of Sam Adams, though?
all these drunk kids.
Like if they had brought out like Jim Cook and he was just like,
Exactly.
hey guys, like,
Hey, I'm from Sam Adams. Like, oh, it's the
what's going on?
Patriot.
Like, oh, that's that guy.
Paul Tuckett Pat. But yeah, so they basically just bring him in to like hit these talking points that they probably have to like check off for whatever educational requirement the show has.
Well, I mean, he's coming in to stir the pot.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. So he's getting all these drunk Bostonians riled up, reminding them all of the different taxations that came from Britain, and then he's like, oh, and by the way, the Boston Massacre happened, and then they're just like, "Rah!" Like flipping tables, and they're like, let's dress as Indians and dump all the tea. It's like, where does this? How did we jump right to that? Have you been talking about this? So I mean, like, here's
the thing: is that like the kids are like there, they're like walking in the street, and then suddenly they see like this rowdy group of bar folk.
Just pouring out down the back alley.
Yeah, and like one of the kids is just like, oh my god, like there's a whole bunch of Native Americans, and the other one's just like, a bunch of war bonnets and like headdresses and stuff like that, and like they're all like running in the direction of the docks, and you know these kids are like, oh my gosh, all these Native Americans, and then one of them is just like, really, like a blonde Native
I think it was
American?
Moses that was basically just like,
Moses?
The blonde, blue-eyed
Again,
Native American doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
With any common sense.
Well, here, so I gotta say this. Two of my favorite moments of this episode. The one when they're in the bar and they're getting all rowdy, and they like form this like plan to do the Boston Tea Party thing. And the one guy like dumps his ash from his pipe onto the bar and dips his finger in it and just drags his fingers across his cheek like he's making the tear marks or like the war makeup. And he looks right in the camera. It's so fucking intense.
He looked like he was somebody like prepping for like a Monday night football game.
Yeah, he was ready to just go on the gridiron,
and just breaking the fourth wall.
That was the original.
Staring you down. So.
That was the original Redskins.
You ready for some football?
Yeah, it was before they moved to Washington. Terrible. My other favorite part of this whole endeavor is like, yes, I understand that Moses bought his freedom and he travels with papers that in case anybody stops him, he's like, no, I'm free. I'm not a slave. Everything's cool. Maybe not the best choice to have him as like your sole guardian of these kids just walking around because he's probably going to attract some attention, which kind of happens later on too. But yeah. So now everybody goes on this ship and they start dumping all this tea. It happens to be the ship that Sarah's on, so that's how we kind of have this meet cute, if you want to call it. Everybody kind of getting to know each other. The funny thing was the show actually portrayed this act as a little more violent, a little more rowdy than it actually was. I guess historically it was actually like a fairly calm protest. Even the sailors at one point, they're like, well, we're not going to stop you and we'll even help you because what the hell do we care? So that was kind of interesting that it was like this show walks a weird line between giving kids just enough historical fact to just be like, okay, remember this name and this title of this thing, and that's all you need to know. You don't really need to know the nuances of it. Yeah.
But I mean, like you think about it, like what's the one thing that kids in history, like kids learning about history, what's the one thing that they crave?
Electrolytes?
I was gonna say blood.
Oh, blood. Like, yeah, kids love historical blood.
Kids love historical blood.
Kids love lightning strikes and blood. Tostina's pizza rolls. Oh shit, that's not our sponsor, by the way, but I wish they were.
Do you have sponsors?
I wish we did. Hey, you gotta sponsor this mess.
So it ends up getting rowdy on the ship, and as a turn of event, oh man, geez, you can't wait for this because it's not like it's the most predictable thing, but like James bumps into Sarah Phillips and he's just like, what do you feel about this? I'm a journalist again.
He's in the middle of this like riot.
Shut up, just shut up. Like
this riot is going on in the ship above him. People are screaming and like shooting. And he's like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm a journalist. And he just like whips out his little pad of paper and is like, how do you feel about this? And then he just argues in her face when she's just like, I think it's disgraceful because she's this prissy like English girl. So and that sets up their sort of contentious relationship.
And I love that like he's like, oh, just so I can get the quote, what's your name? And she's like Sarah Phillips.
He's like, oh, he spells it out, and he gets 99% of the way through her name. God, just to eat up time, I think, on this show. Because we're 10 minutes into that show, and it's called the Boston Tea Party, right? The Boston Tea Party's done. It's done. Yeah, so now they're like, well, what the hell do we do now? Here's what you do. You escape through the streets of Boston, basically kidnapping Sarah as you go along, because she doesn't want to go with him. and you end up at the house of Phyllis Wheatley, because
Yep.
that's what you do. So I had to look
Yeah.
her up because I'm terrible again. But apparently, the
No,
first
I-
African American woman published.
Yes.
I don't know ever, or just in the United States, or colonial America, or what. But yeah, they just show up at her house, and then they're all like flabbergasted to find that she's actually kind of a slave to the Wheatleys.
Right.
This is where they stop. Now, granted, it's after curfew. They've already been stopped by a guard in the streets. The British are patrolling the streets looking for anybody that's out after dark. Now they're all standing there with a black man and a bunch of unrelated kids and a slave. And they're standing there after curfew, and Phyllis just decides to tell her story right then and there.
Yeah,
Not like, hey,
just,
come on around
hey.
back, I'll make you some tea, and then we'll chat. Just, yeah, let me just tell you my life story right here and now.
And I mean, like,
come in.
it's challenging. I mean, like, you have to realize that, like, this is like maybe 15 minutes. This is like anywhere between like the 10 and 15-minute mark. And so far, like, there have been like 2 backstories that are related to slavery, and like that is never an easy thing to like just dive into.
Well, and they picked the weirdest time and place to do it too, because if you want to talk slavery, I don't know, maybe leave it for the Civil War, because even the founding fathers were like, look, we don't necessarily agree with it, especially people like Jefferson, who tried to work it into a lot of the documents. They're basically
Right.
like, look, this is a problem, but we've got bigger fish to fry right now. We've got to become an independent nation first, and then we can deal with that later. They were
Right.
like, let's table it for 80 years, and then we'll deal with it.
Thanks, Obama.
Wow, okay.
Jesus.
I don't know where that came from. But it's just weird how they try to, like, shoehorn that stuff in. It's like, if you're doing Boston Tea Party, maybe don't focus on, like, slave rights for half of this episode. So I don't know. It was just a little strange. Maybe
I mean, they could have talked more about like the Tea Act, the Stamp Act,
any of the
like,
taxes,
they-
the
yeah, like,
occupation
I mean,
by the soldiers, any of that stuff.
Right. I mean, they explain very clearly in like one line of dialogue.
Thanks, Sam
They're
Adams.
just like,
Yeah.
they're just like, we're being taxed as a colony, and we have no representation in British Parliament.
Doesn't James
End
actually
of
say
story.
it? I think he says it. He's
yeah,
like,
I
no
think he
taxation
says that almost verbatim.
without
and
representation.
No taxation without, and you're
It's
just
like, what does that mean? Yeah.
You're like, hey, buddy, just move to DC. We still have that.
Yeah, you have it on your license plate, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we do.
well, I thought you did.
So I mean, like, it's just they go through this whole big long thing, and so whatever, it's all done.
Yeah, that's pretty much
and
it.
so
That's kind of like end of story.
Yeah,
They get,
that's like that's like it. That's like the first episode.
the funny
they,
thing was-
they need to get a letter out. So they need to get a printing press.
Yes.
And then they just commit a breaking and entering.
No, well, that too. And meanwhile, like, Franklin is back in England, where, unbeknownst to me, or apparently history, he's being tried as like a traitor in like the House of like Lords or something in Parliament.
Yeah.
Which I don't
Yeah, I
think.
don't remember that.
I don't think that ever happened. I think so. The only historical fact I think the Boston Tea Party did happen when he was over in London. They found out about it, and he kind of denounced it because he had to publicly there, even though
Yeah.
he was kind of supported what they did back home. But over there, he it was a very savvy political mind, so he kind of like downplayed it and was just like, okay, I should probably get the fuck out of here and get back, or they will hang me the next time. So yeah, don't think they ever brought him up as a traitor, but whatever. It's just educating the kids. Just whatever you need to tell them is fine. Yeah. So that's the end of Boston Tea Party. Now, did you guys watch any other episodes that you want to chat about?
I watched the next episode.
I think you guys
after
both
it.
did. So do you want to?
Yeah, I watched the next 2.
What was that about, Matt? What was the next one about?
So right after the Boston Tea Party, it kind of went right into they were like harping on the taxes thing for a bit, and they went right into like the next taxes, like the Intolerable Act, that kind of thing. So, I mean, it was interesting in the like sort of educational cartoon way that they kind of took one historical item and then built a largely bullshit story around it. But at the same time, like, just a lot of the, items like the, Stamp Act, the Intolerable Acts, like, the Sugar Act, I mean, they kind of build it into like almost like one episode each.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm almost glad I didn't watch this because I don't know if I could have sat through them.
Yeah, I was like, well, I guess I should just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him credit because it's like this stuff isn't exactly dry. Like John Adams is a great miniseries to sit through and watch it, and you learn a lot of stuff. I don't know how historically accurate it all is, but it's very entertaining, and it feeds it to you in a way that you're just listening and watching a story. This stuff was very much like, okay, kids, now it's time to pay attention because here comes a historical factoid. It's tough, to balance that. I watched the first 4th of July, which was basically when they were trying to get the Declaration of Independence together, and they had to get all the delegation or the delegates from the 13 colonies to come together and ratify and agree on things, and that was a big bone of contention. I think they did that one okay. That one was fine. So yeah, again, I don't know. Did you guys have any more you want to talk about in specific episodes before we kind of wrap up and see if we recommend?
I was just curious, at what episode did they bring in Benjamin Martin?
Ben Martin?
Yeah. It was Mel Gibson played him in the movie The Patriot.
What? Oh, yeah, I don't know. He's all just bloody on the battlefield with just holding an American flag.
Yeah, what part did that? Wait, was that not historically accurate?
No, 100%.
Oh, 100%.
That's
well,
how
that
Heath
character
Ledger died,
was
actually.
based off a historical figure.
No, was it really?
Was it really?
Yeah.
Was it Sylvester Stallone's Paul Revere? That might be the fact of the episode. I love that so much.
Oh,
I love that.
Oh my God, Dave.
Classic.
Dave, how do you feel about this show? Would you seriously recommend it?
Dude, I mean, look, if I were a 3rd or 4th grade teacher and
You just had a deep sigh. That's a no.
I did. But like I said, if I'm a 3rd or 4th grade teacher and I'm really hungover after the 4th of July weekend, then yeah, I'm going to play a straight week of select episodes just to get myself
glad you're
back
not a
together.
teacher.
No, it's probably a really good thing because who would be teaching on the 4th of July in the middle of fucking summer? I just realized. Unless you're one of them crazy year-round schools, that's un-American. I don't know. Like I said, for us in the shows that we kind of talk about that are just entertaining and fun and just goofy tunes, no, I wouldn't look at it for that. But if you're actually looking for something for younger kids to give them something educational, that's not just the sugary crap that's on TV, then yeah, it's probably you could do worse. You could do worse.
Yeah.
Ringing endorsement, you can do worse.
Baron, how did you feel?
I mean, it was good and bad. I mean, on one hand, I kind of like the animation style, and I'm on the fence with historical cartoons because on one hand it's a good show, but on the other hand it's terribly done. So I'm giving this a solid 5.
Out of what?
Out of what?
30.
Just 5. Just 5. You do the math.
You do the math.
So I don't know. Well, Sean, did you give your non-recommendation yet? You obviously hate this show, but
you know what? I would say watch the first episode.
Yeah, check it out.
I'd say watch the first episode just because, look, if you're as much of a fan as I am about seeing the East India Tea Company get their comeuppance, then yes, you have to watch the first episode for this show.
Captain Jack Sparrow doesn't show up though, as far as I know.
I think it's, again, not to reiterate a point, but I mean, I just think historical cartoons are very challenging, and educational cartoons are very challenging, and
True.
So they took two challenging subjects and put them together, two challenging genres, and mashed them together. And I mean, I think for the purpose that it served, I think that it was good. I think that if you have sat through a history class and you have graduated high school and you're watching this, you're just gonna sit there and just be like, what is this? What the hell is going on?
I don't think I've ever described any show like this before, but it's functional. It's functional.
Yeah, it
Which
really
isn't really
serves
entertaining.
a purpose.
Yeah, it serves a specific purpose, and it manages to almost achieve that purpose well. But yeah, so the show's about history. This show is history, and we'll never have to talk about that one again. So,
thank you.
You guys, that's our first holiday special. What the hell? Arbor Day? I don't know what the next one's going to be. No idea. Are there any Arbor Day shows?
Oh, please.
Captain Planet?
Yeah, that'll work.
Oh, God.
It's more of an Earth Day, I guess. But we can work some Arbor Day. Yeah.
Shut up, Dave. We're getting up for Arbor Day. Shut up.
So we'll have another holiday special coming at you. In the meantime, do you guys have anything that you want to plug in the coming weeks?
Yep.
What you got? What's coming up?
Hey, I'm going to be performing some improv in the District of Columbia.
How about that?
Who's dropping bowling pins?
That would be Rachel.
Oh, Rachel.
Rachel's our producer. In case yes.
July 12th at the Source Theater in Washington, D.C., near U Street. I'm going to be performing improv at 10 p.m. With a group called Nox. That's Nox. You can look us up and find tickets online at WashingtonImprovTheater.com.
Excellent. We'll have all that information up on our website as usual. Matt, I know you just moved. You're probably looking forward to a good long rest. Anything coming up for you in the coming weeks?
Lots of IKEA furniture assembly.
Ooh,
Boom.
that's rough.
That's exciting.
That is not a vacation.
I love that.
Do you? Maybe you can go over to his
do.
place and do it for him.
I really do.
It'll be an international
Yeah,
experience for you.
It is international.
Yeah,
I mean, it's strangely therapeutic in a way that, the hate just drowns everything else.
I concur.
It's a very focused hate.
I put a bed together backwards once and then had to take it apart.
What, like upside down?
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. How do people sleep? I don't sleep.
Sean sleeps strapped to his mattress and hanging from the ceiling, apparently.
I have a sleepwalking disorder. Relax.
Ah, well, there you go. That explains it. Yeah, so not much from me. I will say if you're interested in any of the San Diego Comic-Con stuff that's coming up at the end of this month, you might want to head over to Collider.com. That's where I write for the site, doing movie news, TV news, entertainment, stuff like that. And we will have a ton of people out at Comic-Con, and we'll be doing a lot of coverage over there. So if you can't quite make it yourself, or if you are going and want to meet up with some of the guys, just follow along at Collider.com. As far as this show, you can find us on our website at SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. That's morning with a U. You can find us on Twitter at MorningTunes.com. Sean's been doing a great job over at our Tumblr page. I don't know how much stuff is going to be for Liberty Kids on Tumblr, but I'm sure we'll find something.
I mean, I put a bunch up there.
Oh, did you already? Okay.
Or I put a couple things up there. It wasn't.
Entertaining, creative.
I only put one post. It was a little bit challenging to find.
I'm sure it was.
So,
But you can find that over at SaturdayMorningCartoons.tumblr.com. You can also email us at SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com if you are so inclined. You can give me reading lessons. I would greatly appreciate that. Where can we find you guys on the Twitters and the Instagrams, all that good stuff?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Sean Paul Ellis.
And Matt?
I'm at MattSF07.
Excellent. And that'll be it for us today. You can find us again next week where we're going to be talking about one of my favorite cartoons. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Oh, man.
And guess what? It's my pick, so I get to say what we're doing this time.
I know.
It's going to be Cops.
Yes.
Fighting crime in a future time. Man, I'm looking forward to that one. It's going to be good. Till next time, thanks for listening. It's been Saturday Morning Cartoons. Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. I'll be your host, Dave Trumbore. Joining me today, as always, the DC area improv artist and comedian, Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, bud?
David. I'm great. How about yourself?
Not too bad. And the freshly moved up the West Coast, I think, Matt Barron. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
Not bad. Did you move? Good. Hey, did you move north, south? I'm terrible with Bay Area geography.
With coordinates?
With coordinates and maps and the Googles.
So technically, also literally east. I just moved to the other side of the Bay Bridge. So
you just take a little ferry boat across there?
No,
Just
we
paddle your own
had a
canoe?
car. Yeah, exactly. That's
A car,
what
as
I
you say.
did. Dave.
Well, I'll tell you what, a car would have come in handy for the show we're going to talk about today. Yeah.
So I could have run it over.
Well, we know how Matt feels about this one. We're going to be talking about, since it was 4th of July weekend this past weekend, hopefully you're all recovering from that, we're going to be talking about Liberty's Kids. It was a early 2000s educational show that was set in colonial times and centered on three kids of varying backgrounds that kind of took other students as they're watching it through the American Revolution over a period of about 20 years. Kids never age in the 15, 20 years.
This is so creepy.
Yeah, kids never age. They stay the same. Ben Franklin, however, he ages, probably due to his rampant venereal disease, which they don't really touch on in this show, surprisingly, because it's meant for like 8-year-olds. But
yeah, really, in terms of historical accuracy,
Right.
they really kind of like they put aside a lot of the misogynistic
they love Ben
tendencies
Franklin.
of Ben Franklin.
Love him in this.
Oh God. Well, I mean, here's the thing: is that these kids are essentially under his ward.
Yes. Yeah.
And
So this is basically the synopsis here. Yeah.
They are kind of like asked to record history, like from their eyes as children's, through as Dave mentioned, through the part of the Revolutionary War. And so, like, from the Boston Tea Party to the Revolutionary War, and
they're not going to
because
serialize
history's
it throughout.
finite.
It's very finite.
They got to the Revolutionary War, they're like, oh fuck, we're done with this show.
Everything's going to be smooth sailing from here. Yeah.
Like, guys, let's just push it forward and see if we can get all the way to WW1.
I mean, pretty much nothing happened between the ratification of the U.S. Constitution and, like, Civil War. That's 70 years. Probably nothing happened there, right? So we'll just skip right on ahead.
Probably not a damn thing. And also, those kids wouldn't have aged in that 30 years anyway, so what does it matter?
No, they were all Highlanders. It was kind of weird.
Just a bunch of McLeods.
They were all from the Connor MacLeod clan.
God.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry, I cut you off, Dave.
No, it's cool. I don't even remember what my train of thought was going to be, but we've already covered the series synopsis and pretty much the history of it. So what the hell? Let's get into it.
It was just a quick history thing. It was by
Deke.
It was by Deke, and here's the thing: is that Deke has made so many wonderful cartoons and shows, like throughout the years.
Yeah.
I want to just put a shout out to Deke. Like, they just do
old school.
They
Deke.
have they've done like
Vintage
a lot of
Deke.
like Vintage Deke did like a lot of great stuff, and so I was actually I want to get this out. I hate history. Like, this show.
This was torture for you, then, I'm sure.
This show made me realize that I hate history. And I'm glad that it is history, because I'm trying to move on with my life, guys, and this history is just making me continue to look back all the time.
Well, hold that thought, because for the next hour we're going to be talking about it again. So after you're done with that, you can put it behind you.
Oh, are we going to be hating on something that we all didn't really super enjoy? Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Buddy, you can hate away. I was actually not pleasantly surprised by this, but I guess neutrally surprised, so I don't even know if that was really good. It wasn't as bad as I thought.
Is that actually a thing?
I guess. I mean, it is now.
Exactly.
I was neutrally not moved.
So...
Yeah, I posted the theme song up a couple days ago, which I thought, now the theme song was my kind of like first foray into this thing, because we were all in college by the time the show was on, so definitely not the audience it was aimed at. But just from the theme song,
we should have mentioned that the original run went from 2000 to 2003,
Correct.
like late 2000 until early 2003.
Yeah, this was another one that they cranked out like 40 episodes of it, and then just syndicated it out.
One season, 40 episodes.
Yeah, which I mean, it kind of makes sense, because it's not like a
saw that originally, I was just like, oh my god, it was the thing that every time at the very end of a show they'd come up, and I just laughed myself, like a pubescent.
Yeah, they always cut that in, so it would
like...
come up for. I mean, I'm sure people remember it was like the shiny. It was a big D. Go ahead, you can laugh again. Lowercase I and a big C. And before little kids could just shout out Dick, they were just like Deke, and they're like, oh, Deke. Obviously, it's definitely Deke.
I felt like it was. Here's the thing. I felt like it was an inside joke that Deke and I shared together, and we were always laughing
thousands
at
of other
something that
kids
was immature.
around. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right, buddy.
It
kept us
all right.
together.
So the first thing that you got into was the theme song.
Yeah. So I had no idea what this was. We had the idea that since it was the holiday, we were going to do like a holiday themed show, and we were just like,
mistakes.
Well, yeah, we'll do it again, I'm sure. For 4th of July, I don't know.
We'll be
just the first
equally as fucked next week.
Yeah, we'll forget. I mean, we have short-term memory problems, so. So holidays, looked up 4th of July stuff. There were like some specials. We were looking at like Schoolhouse Rock, which is probably like the equivalent for us as kids, and even an older generation as kids, as to what this show was. But yeah, the theme song was my first introduction.